roar. He kind of did like this amalgamation of different animal roars. And they kind of did that for this one, but they didn't like it. So just testing out different things. I guess when they were running up their hand up and down a stringed instrument, like, oh, well, what would it sound like it was something really coarse and rough on it? And that's how they got the roar.
That's cool. That's cool.
And the second point I was going to bring up was that in Japan, they re-imported the American version of Godzilla back to Japan. So Japan actually technically had a re-release of Godzilla, but it was the American version. So it was a really poorly translated movie where they had to watch a movie that originally had Japanese dialogue that was translated to English, translated back into Japanese.
That must have been so weird to watch. Like, watch a dub of a man ask, what are they saying in Japanese? And then that sounds so weird.
Right. Because I don't know if you've done this in the past before, but, you know, I've used the tool Babelfish where like you take certain foreign phrases, you translate it to English, and you translate it back and forth. And it's just, it doesn't even resemble what you were originally saying in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can only imagine that's what that is like. But I mean, hey, Godzilla was that much of a hit that they were like, hey, well, let's do more Godzilla content.
Absolutely. And in fact, they had such high hope for it. You know what the tagline for the American Godzilla in Japan was?
What?
They taglined it as 100 times more interesting than the original.
Damn. Whatever the original director of that, I don't know. That's like a slap in the face, right? Oh yeah, this one's better. Even though a little spoiler, I wouldn't agree with that. And I don't think most people would.
No, definitely not. But they did say that Honda, the director of the first Godzilla movie, is a total company man, totally understood that it wasn't like a slap in the face. It was just a marketing ploy. So he took it all within stride.
What a good dude.
But now let's dig right into Godzilla Raids again. And Nathan, if this movie seems like it was made very cheaply and very poorly and very fast,
yes,
that's because it was.
Okay, that makes sense. I can look at the release dates and tell you that they really pumped this one out for the time.
Yes, they released it 6 months after the original movie left cinemas.
That's insane. Absolutely, that's such crazy turnaround. And you can tell you can tell that it's kind of a rushed movie.
They used a lot of assets from other Toho movies. So Tsuburaya, the special effects wizard of the first movie, also did the special effects for this movie as well. But a lot of the sets and miniatures were left over from a previous movie that they did with a Toho, which they had a movie called The Invisible Avenger, which took place at an oil refinery, and it kind of fits into the cannery motif of this movie. So they basically just use a lot of the miniatures, and they're just like, how can we make this movie as fast and cheap as possible?
Gotcha. That's really interesting that they would use that makes me interested to watch that movie just to see the comparison between the two sets. And you could definitely I don't think this is a knock in a movie from this era, but you could tell it's a set this time, especially in that first beginning scene, like the rocky island they're on. That is definitely a set.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very clearly a set, and it doesn't look great. And you can kind of see the differences when you watch the original Godzilla movie, because in the original Godzilla movies, almost everything was shot on location. So when they go to that really small village on the island, they're outside, they're on an island, they see a bunch of huts and villages. So it's just very clearly they said, let's just make this movie really quickly on a set and let's not spend a whole lot of money on this.
Do you know what critical reaction or even audience reaction was for this at the time?
Yes, very poorly.
Yeah. Poorly? Okay, gotcha.
Critics, a lot of Japanese critics did pan it as a cash grab, because it's very clearly a cash grab. So
I think this movie, I mean, for one, it probably, like, that hurt it just coming out so close to the last one, because it really is going to get compared to that first one heavily. And what's the thing is like, this one is what I would more think what your normal B monster movie is. And then compared to the first one, it has all that meaning, has a lot of like subtext to it. This kind of rips that out a little bit. It lacks a lot of subtext.
A lot of the weight is taken out. And even when it's supposed to be the super serious scene, it doesn't feel like that at all. And it's just a lot of we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but when the one scene where there is, after Godzilla devastates this one part of town, in the original movie, it's like this big, horrible event. There's people crying, dying. You can really see the horrible effects that happened. And this one, they're like, okay, well, I guess we got to move operations. And somebody tells a joke, and then they all start laughing.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in this movie. Oh man, I'm sounding really negative on this. I actually don't really hate this movie or anything, but there is a lot of negatives to this movie. Like, especially the human characters coming off the first one, they're like big, they have personality. In this one, they have personality, but I wasn't really rooting for them in any way.
The human characters are not very good, and they take away a lot of the personality, because a lot of these other characters have these big torments that they're working through. Dr. Serizawa, the original movie, had this big moral dilemma of, he has the solution to kill Godzilla, but he doesn't want it to fall into the wrong hands. And in this one, it's just they're kind of like, whoa, we're just regular people. How can we beat Godzilla? And it's more focused. The scope is so much smaller. It felt like in the first one, all of Japan was working to stop Godzilla. In this one, it just kind of feels like this like tuna fish can company is working to stop Godzilla. It doesn't even feel like the rest of Japan cares that Godzilla is destroying this one city.
There's no like impending doom to it, right? Like, I mean, I like just thinking back to the first movie, like the build up to Godzilla was so big. And I mean, I guess we had seen Godzilla before, so the build up isn't quite there, but you literally, like, this movie starts with the pilots, they crash, they're on the island, and Godzilla's head just pops up, and he's looking a little goofier than before. But I do like the way Godzilla looks in this one. I actually don't hate it. He's not as scary, but he definitely has more movement, I would say.
Right, and that was no mistake either, because the other big thing about this movie is that he fights another monster.
Yeah.
And that monster is Angerous. This is his first appearance in the Godzilla series. He will appear later, but he is Godzilla's very first enemy. And Godzilla just beats the crap out of him.
Yeah, they just hate each other. They don't like each other. That's what I got out of this. There's no explanation, which is fine. It's just like two old school monsters just going at it. They look like wrestlers. I don't know. There's something so interesting about seeing two dudes in rubber suits just tackle at each other, grapple each other. It's fun.
Right. That's a big appeal for me for Godzilla, seeing these two fight. And the fighting in this one, it's good. It's good. It's not bad. It's not as dynamic or as exciting as the later movies get.
It gets better.
But it gets better.
Okay. Good.
And to me, the Godzilla series is kind of like at that border where they made this super serious movie, and then Godzilla just kind of becomes this really kind of crazy character as the series goes on. So they're kind of at that line where they're like, okay, we're starting to do some kind of goofy stuff maybe, and maybe we'll eventually get there. But they're still trying to play it 100% serious.
Yeah, I think maybe if this movie went into the more silly angle, I would have appreciated it more, but it might have just needed that slow, like, kind of descent into being what Godzilla is. I do want to ask you, as a Godzilla fan, how does Angerous rank amongst Godzilla's other enemies?
As an enemy, very poorly. But
okay,
I know you haven't seen the rest of the series, so I'm going to spoil you a little bit. But
okay.
Angerous pretty much becomes Godzilla's like buddy in later
That's awesome.
movies. So Angerous will Angerous shows up many times, and he's not remembered as a Godzilla foe so much. He's more remembered as Godzilla's best friend.
I love it. Angerous is he's kind of cute for like an ugly dinosaur boy. I don't know. I could see being a best friend.
Yeah, he's like a little dog that kind of hangs out.
Yeah, but in this one, he's just kind of like an angry, just kind of like an angry dog, right? He's like biting at the heels of Godzilla, and Godzilla has to like bend over to attack him.
Right, and I would have loved to have seen him utilize his spiked back a little more, because in later movies he launches himself, he utilizes his spikes a lot more.
That's cool.
And this one, it's really forgivable, because I do want to say that, because this was not a common thing. You did not see two monsters fighting in rubber suits, because in earlier movies it was all stop motion, so they had a lot more control with how these monsters would react to each other. And this one, it's man-on-man contact, and it's a little awkward, but it does get better, as I said.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, maybe it just needed to stumble a little bit before it could really like go strong. What's I mean, this is getting ahead, but what's the next one after this?
Oh boy, the next one after this is the big one, is King Kong versus Godzilla.
Ooh, okay, that's two big monsters fighting each other. That's exciting. Yeah, they just had to stumble to get to the big boys. But no, I mean, yeah, I think this is what I enjoyed the most about this movie, is just seeing the monsters fight. The human stuff, it's very awkward. I mean, there's some funny bits. Like, I do love to find out what Angerous is. They pull out just like some old dinosaur book, and they're like, there it is. There he is. That's Angerous. Yeah.
It's just kind of funny where they just pull out this dinosaur book, and like you said, it's like okay, now pick out the dinosaur you saw, and they're like, that's it right there.
Yeah,
Angerous.
There's something silly about it, and then oh God, I forget his name. He returns from the other Godzilla,
Dr. Yamane.
Yeah, Dr. Yamane returns, and he plays a bit part, and he's kind of depressing though, because he's just sitting there like, there's nothing we can do. We can't kill this monster. It's not happening.
Right. So just to give you a kind of, let me go right back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Let's go right into the beginning. So we're talking about, like I said, is Godzilla Raids again. How this movie starts is there are these two pilots. They're kind of scouting out perfect areas for fishing for their fish cannery company that they work for, and one of them crash lands on an island. The other goes to save him. And as they're there, they see two monsters fighting each other, which is Godzilla and Angerous. And they get right into it. There is no holding off in this movie.
Yeah, you see Godzilla's head. He pops out from behind the mountain, and you go straight into fighting, and the two dudes are reacting to it. And no explanation needed. I think it's more you're supposed to think like this isn't the Godzilla that died. This is just another Godzilla that was born from nuclear explosions.
Right. So when getting back into what you were saying about Dr. Yamane, when he sees, because he's the only returning character from the previous movie, like everybody else is not mentioned other than they used an oxygen destroyer. They killed the first Godzilla, and at the end of the first movie, Dr. Yamane said, oh, there might be more creatures like Godzilla. And here he is. It's not the same monster. It's part of his family, his species, whatever, but here he is. And this is the generation of Godzilla that does stick around. This is the one that withstands all the time.
Okay, gotcha. That's good.
Because what I will say is, which it makes a whole lot more sense of why they went with this ending. So Toho actually had zero intention of making a sequel to Godzilla.
Really?
Right. They thought it was a complete story. That's why it ends so definitively. Godzilla is dead. Nothing to debate. And pretty much after they're at the after party from the premiere of Godzilla, and they realize what a success they have on their hands, and the movie gets immediately greenlit. And the movie comes out so fast, like we said, that it comes out faster than the American version of the original Godzilla.
God, that's insane. Like that's absolutely. When did the because we'll get into this a little bit later, but we have Gigantus, which is the American copy of this movie, just like Godzilla did. When did that come out?
So that movie actually came out in 1959.
59. Holy crap, that's actually way out. It took a little bit, which is weird because I felt like I don't know because I wasn't around then, of course, but Godzilla would be a part of like popular culture by then, that they wouldn't want to just go for a Godzilla 2.
Well, we'll get into that because the American version of this movie had some up and downs, to say the least.
Gotcha. But yeah, back to the version we watched, because we did just only watch the Japanese version.
So overall, though, I didn't hate the movie. It's definitely a lot weaker.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was okay, and there's a lot of there's enough charm in there to keep me entertained during the whole time.
Exactly. It got a good amount of what I would expect. I got to see two monsters fighting. It's not like the humans were horrible to watch. They have, like I said, they have some memorable moments. In particular, one of the main dudes, he's like a bigger dude. You remember this scene, which is weird because it comes in between fighting Godzilla, where he's like trying to find out what a woman wants. It's like a whole romance subplot. It's really weird. Like, it's funny, but also like it kind of kills the pacing a little.
It's so shoehorned in.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's it's sandwiched in between these scenes where Godzilla is going to town, attacking things, and they're like, oh, what should I get my potential girlfriend? Like, what do you think they're like? They're like, oh, well, maybe a watch or maybe a purse.
A handbag.
Yeah. And like, there's a giant monster. There should be a little more pressing matters right now.
Exactly. It would have been fine closer to the beginning of the movie, but I don't know. I don't know if they were too scared because it wasn't as popular of a thing to just have a movie with two dudes in rubber suits fighting. They didn't know if that was what everybody would want.
Well, so I think one reason for the mood change, which they do explain in the book, is that so after there's really not much of a plot to this movie. So it kind of seems like we're not really describing the plot. There's really not a whole lot. I
was gonna say, yeah. I mean, it might sound like we're skipping a lot, but after I finished this movie, I was like, oh, okay, so there's not much plot to speak of. I'm not gonna really have a lot to say on that front.
Yeah, it's pretty much just like they see these two monsters. They see the monsters fighting. How do we stop these monsters? Mm-hmm. And it's ran by this ragtag team of like that work for a fishing company. And anyway, after the two monsters battle, they destroy the cannery that they work at. And like I said, they have this kind of jovial, like, oh, haha, now we just just make a big joke about it. And one reason why that tone was there was because the last movie was trying to represent this time of Japan where it was showing like the dark history of Japan and how they're dealing with this nuclear devastation. And this movie was more meant to be kind of like that rebuilding phase that Japan went through, where they're trying to be a lot more positive and trying to rebuild civilization and try to get back on their feet. So this was kind of like, oh, we know this nuclear threat has happened, but we're just going to try to make the best of it and keep positive.
Yeah, I guess that's good. Now I think about it, maybe that's not what Japan needed at the time, was two brooding, dark movies about like the horrible things that had happened in the past. So, that actually clears up a lot of the movie for me. That's a good context.
It is context, and I'm sure it may have been whatever, but considering this movie was panned, obviously audiences and critics didn't really respond that well to it. This movie still did modestly well, success-wise. Wasn't a big blockbuster hit like the last one. It actually sold 1 million less tickets than the original. So, I mean, it's not a terrible movie. I mean, considering that the original Godzilla, I forget what the number was, but it was something crazy, like 20% of the entire country had seen that movie.
Yeah. It wasn't anything on that level, but But hey, I mean, at least it's Godzilla, right? If 20% of the people saw Godzilla, there's people that are willing to see Godzilla too, no matter what anybody says about the quality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of one of those movies where I guess they kind of figured just name alone, people would go see it.
Yeah. And I mean, look at us now. I mean, it's a part of a huge franchise, and I feel like we have to watch Raids again if we want to enjoy the whole franchise. You can't skip it.
Absolutely not.
No.
A couple things I do want to point out. So they made heavy use of puppets in this one. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of scenes where instead of the two guys in the rubber suits fighting, it was just like puppets just kind of like mashing their mouths together. Did you?
Yes, I noticed that.
So that was one thing where they kind of cut corners a lot, which I thought was kind of cute and funny.
Mm-hmm. Are you gonna mention the in the end in like an icy area, and there's an overhead shot of Godzilla, and he's just like looks like an action figure just standing there.
I was wondering, like, why would they even include that in this movie? Yeah, because that's like one of the worst shots I've ever seen in a movie, honestly.
Yeah, it really, like, seeing it, I laughed out loud because I was like, what? Yeah, it's that bad. Like, it's I don't know, because in that sequence doesn't look bad. I actually like that finale. But what are some other ways they cut corners?
Well, yeah, so that was like that scene in particular, that was supposed to be like a little like motor powered or like little wind up toy type of Godzilla that was supposed to move on its own, mm-hmm. but they couldn't get it to look right for aerial shots. So they're like, just screw it, just leave it as it is. Yeah. And another thing was, so there's, in the original movie, when Godzilla would move around, they actually slowed down, like they added additional frames to his movement, so that way it looked like he was a lot slower and it looked like there was a lot more weight to his steps. And this one of the cameras was set to have less frames. So I don't know if you saw, but when they were fighting, there was like a couple of fast motion sequences.
Yeah, I mean, things were definitely moving faster. I guess I didn't notice what it was at the time, but that makes sense now that I think about it. Especially with Angerous. I feel like Angerous kind of like he moved a lot faster than I would assume.
Yeah, one of the crew members accidentally had that setting on there to where it would play fast motion, and then when Super Rai saw it, he was just like, "What the hell?" And but it was already done, so they just left it in the movie.
I'm sure that man was fired from Toho the next day. Sounds like a crazy place to work at.
Right.
Yeah.
So speaking of working at Toho, the director of this movie, as we said, is not directed by the original Godzilla director Ishiro Honda. It's actually directed by Motoyoshi Oda. And the reason why they moved Honda off of this movie was they really liked his characters in other movies, and they thought he actually had a lot more potential to make more female-orientated movies. So they actually took him off of the Godzilla sequel and put him into just a love story romance type of movie instead.
Okay, all right, interesting. And I guess you said he was a company man, so I'm sure he was perfectly fine with it.
He was perfectly fine with it. He just said, whatever you need me for.
Hey, good for him. I don't know a lot about his movies, but I hope he had a really great career. He made Godzilla. You make Godzilla, you're set as like a great director just from that. So I'm sure he did some good stuff.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
But moving forward though, Honda pretty much directed the majority of these Godzilla movies. Like the original.
He did? Oh,
yes.
Okay. All right, cool.
So he did come back.
Okay, I was thinking that was his only Godzilla movie. Okay, cool. Like come on back, Honda.
He left a legacy and then he left. No, he came back.
Oh, cool. Oh, no wonder. I mean, no wonder that the quality might come back in the later movies.
Right. And so he does come back originally, and then Motoyoshi is kind of like this guy. They pretty much when they had a B movie with Toho, they pretty much gave it to this guy, and you can kind of see why. Like they're like, we need something fast and cheap, and they get this guy. Mm-hmm. But I don't think the directing is bad per se. It's okay.
I think the guy was kind of working with what he had. He did what he had to do. He was rushed. It was fast, but like the acting's not bad. I don't think any of the fights are bad. There's a really cool scene with them crashing through a pagoda. There's some cool special effects. He did. I think he did what he had to do. Speaking
of that pagoda, get ready to see that thing get crushed a bunch, because that is,
I know,
that is a big staple of later movies. Just those giant castles just getting demolished.
That's what it's all about. City destroying. That's the good stuff.
Another thing was the original composer of Godzilla that gave us that iconic score. He did not return for this movie, and they got another composer. And I'll be honest, I thought the score was actually pretty decent.
It was fine. I couldn't tell you any thing notable about it, but it didn't. It wasn't anything bad.
They did say when they interviewed that composer that he wanted to do something completely different, and he kind of went for a more jazz type of theme, or a lot more faster paced. So he tried his best. Yeah, he did.
But there's nothing like the Godzilla theme. That Godzilla theme is just so good.
It would be hard to compete. Moving forward, it's hard to even think of another theme.
Mm-hmm. But this movie, I guess, at the end of it feels kind of like the stepchild of the bunch, right? Just kind of different than everything else, kind of like an in-between phase in a way.
It's definitely one of the lowest regarded movies in terms of these original movies.
But it's not the lowest, right?
It's not the lowest, and I will let you know when we get to the lowest.
Hell yeah.
So... And you'll know right away when you watch it, but I probably won't have to tell you. But some other notable facts about the making of the movie: the one scene where Angerous and Godzilla fall into the water together. Mm-hmm. They have to be caught by crew members because those suits weighed a ton.
Oh wow!
And if they can't swim in them, so crew members had to be in the water when they fell in, because otherwise they would have drowned in those suits.
Dang, that's some dangerous work. I do want to talk about one other scene that just came to my mind that actually made me angry. There's a scene where
Angrious?
Yeah, it made me angrious. Yeah, I was like Angerous, getting ready. Dude, there's a scene where they just show clips from the first Godzilla, and it's silent, no sound. It's just a spread out time that I could not stand.
That was really bad. I will give you credit for that, because I don't I get it. If you wanted to show clips of it, but it was like a 5-minute uninterrupted, no sound sequence of just when Godzilla was destroying Tokyo.
Yeah, it would be a slap in the face, but if there was sound, but there is nothing for you to even hear in a sound movie. It's weird, super weird choice. One thing I do like is the finale. Were you moving into the finale?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So they end up on an ice island, and the idea is that they can destroy a Godzilla by an avalanche. So what their plan is, they shoot and they capture Godzilla through snow, which I actually think is, it's a fun piece. It has really cool scenery, like him being surrounded by what looks like ice cubes slowly coming down on him. It's good stuff.
And that was real ice too. They actually borrowed it from an ice maker.
It's cool.
Cool. An industrial sized one, but yes.
It definitely looked like real ice. It looked like an ice tray.
I thought it was funny because Godzilla just looked so pitiful in that ice, because he's just trying to get out.
Yeah. How do you feel about Godzilla's look in this one? Because he looks a little goofier, but I kind of like it. He has some personality. There's a scene in that area where he looks and he does a side eye at the camera. He's got moving eyes. There's something about that I like.
I didn't mind it.
Okay.
I will say there are some later suit designs where I'm not a fan of, and
Gotcha.
Godzilla looks horrible. And the reason why is these movies are so rigorous for these suits that every single Godzilla movie, they have to make a new suit from scratch.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can only imagine, because what they do with this, like being thrown in the water, being surrounded by ice. I can only imagine.
Yeah, and working extreme temperatures, wear and tear, and especially this one where you're fighting another monster. There's going to be rips, tears, that sort of thing in these movies. And but no, I liked it. It's a lot more skinnier, a lot slimmer look and the first one. He doesn't look as big. The only thing I didn't like is that there was a lot of room in there, and there were some scenes where he would bend over and you can actually see like the fabric of the costume, like kind of like contour, like bend, where it looks like a shirt or like something bendy like is in there, or it looks like he's in a costume. That's the only kind of stuff. But they did get the original suit performer Nakajima from the first movie. He's back.
Good for him.
So he's pretty much the Godzilla, the suit wearer.
Does he usually return for Godzilla?
Oh, he did almost all of them.
Almost all. Awesome. Cool.
Some other notable facts about this one is Angerous' roar was actually a distorted saxophone.
Oh, sick. That's awesome.
And so a lot of these facts and trivia I'm pulling where I'm citing my sources, I'm jumping ahead, is from the YouTube video, again, Big Action Bill. And he actually plays an unedited version of what Angerous sounds like, and it just sounds like crazy saxophone.
That's awesome. So he's a jazz head, is what I'm getting out of this.
He loves jazz.
Okay,
you like
cool.
jazz?
Yeah. What movie is maybe that sounds like a movie we should cover at some point, I think.
Absolutely. One other thing I do like a lot, another scene I liked was when they actually showed the Osaka like nightclub scenes.
The music in that scene I like the song a lot. Sorry.
It was no.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And I really liked just the neon of it, where it was just like this black void and these lights came up and it just looked really cool looking, I thought.
No, I think, and that's the one scene where panic really feels real, because they hear the announcement that Godzilla's heading there and everybody runs out of the nightclub and it looks like actual chaos. So that's like the one scene where I feel like panic really hits.
Yeah, it's a good scene. That one I thought actually worked really well, and I wish there was more kind of like weight to other scenes like that. Lastly, the other thing I don't like is that Angerous really he's not really a huge threat in this movie. No. Angerous gets killed, pretty much killed off halfway into the movie.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Unfortunately, I like the guy.
He'll be back, don't worry.
Okay, good. To be friends with Godzilla.
Best friends. You chomp my neck a little bit, I bleed. Hey, water under the bridge.
Yeah. I think even I don't know. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, like we've been saying, like they didn't know what to do with a versus monster movie. And hey, I mean, it's nice to see a versus monster movie that makes the decision who the winner is. That's pretty nice. So
it's very definitive.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good time. I'm going to we want to talk a little bit about the English version.
Yeah, Gigantus. There's a subtitle to that, right? It's Gigantus, the volcano monsters.
The fire monster.
The fire monster.
I want to read off some of the alternate titles for this movie. So originally it started out as the volcano monsters.
Okay, yeah.
And then it became Gigantus the Fire Monster. And then it became Counterattack of the Monsters. And then it became Godzilla Raids again. And then it became Godzilla's Counterattack.
What is going on?
Eventually, so there was VHS, it was Gigantus. And then eventually in VHS releases, it did become Godzilla Raids again.
Oh, they finally were like, this is what this is.
But I don't think I haven't seen the English language version, so I couldn't tell you. There's some really goofy parts in there, but I do know that it eventually did get to its proper title. But there is some really interesting things about how it came to America. So originally, it was going to be called the Volcano Monsters, and there was a production company that basically went to Toho and said, "Hey, we want to use your movie, but we want to make a completely new movie and just use your special effects." And Toho said, "Sure, no problem." And in fact, they actually sent the studio brand new Angerous and Godzilla suits.
That's awesome.
And they never used them. It never happened.
Wow, nice. Yay. And I think I read a little trivia that those suits were never found again, right? Like nobody knows where they're at. Oh.
Toho probably spent thousands of dollars in man hours to make this, and total waste of time and money.
God, that's so old Hollywood. Like that is like just like no all disregard for money or keeping things pristine or for collectors.
I know. Can you imagine just like how outrageous that would be today if somebody made a Godzilla suit and they just sent it like, well, we don't know where it is.
Yeah, so stupid. I mean, like stuff like that happen. I mean, this is a side thing, but like where Universal destroyed the Phantom of the Opera set, like the oldest standing set, stuff like that. I mean, it still goes on, I guess. So messed up.
I mean, it's crazy. Just in the back of the day, they're like, "Oh, we're never going to need this again. Let's just burn everything."
Yeah, it's a part of history.
We're never going to play this movie in the theater again. Just throw it in the garbage.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's just like, nope, this was a failure. Bye. I guess there was no concept of home media at the time.
So this movie did finally come to America. It was brought over by an American producer, and everyone thought originally that he couldn't get the rights to the movie Godzilla, but this man's brilliant thinking was this movie is going to be way more successful if I don't call it a Godzilla movie. Now, mind you, Godzilla was a huge success in America. It was the fourth highest grossing foreign movie ever to come to America. And he just said, no, I think it'll do better if it's called Gigantus the Fire Monster.
All I can say is dummy. Like, no, you shouldn't be in the movie business. If he lived now, it would be like huge. Everything's name recognition nowadays. Good Lord.
Which is funny, speaking of names. So in the English version of the credits, when they list the director of this movie, his name is Motoyoshi Oda. And in the credits, they spell Motoyoshi QDQ.
What?
Like it's the letter Q, D, and Q.
No. Why would they do that? The poor. Oh my God.
Which they didn't care. But the American producer, I can't think of his name. He has the super long name. His name is spelled correctly.
Oh, so it's a race thing. Gotcha. Oh, okay. Is Oda really that hard to spell? Come on now, guys.
O-D-N-A, it's complicated. Just put two Qs.
Yeah, there's no Americans named that. That's weird, some stuff like that.
George Takei was one of the original voice actors for the dub.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool.
And there's some really ridiculous dialogue in there. And there's one scene where one of the actors uses a very outdated phrase called banana oil.
Yeah, you sent me that clip right before the show.
Which is crazy, yeah, because the guy's talking about this one woman, his girlfriend is saying, like, oh, you're so brave. And he's just like, banana oil.
What?
Apparently that was a very popular phrase in the 30s. I don't know.
But it was the 1950s. Come on.
You got me. But
I don't know. I'm going to start saying it on the podcast.
But I don't really have a whole lot to say about the English language version. It's not a whole lot, but I do want to end the discussion on the English language one with a passage from the English language movie. So the scene that you described where it's these scientist characters sitting around talking about the Angerous. Mm-hmm. So they actually get the little dinosaur book and they explain in the Japanese version, it's just, he's very nimble, very aggressive type of creature. And this one, they're like, okay, here, read this. And then the passage that they read for Angerous, which they also call him Angelus. Angelus, yes. And they said, okay, so I'm going to start reading a passage. Oh, so a new book came out and we learned so much. It is called Ankylos, Ankylosaurus, Killer of the Living. And the military officer says, Ankylosaurus. And the scientist says, true. Take a look at this. It's a picture. Ankylosaurus, a monster commonly known as Angelus, a specimen of giant reptile, roamed the earth millions of years ago. Murderers, original plundering murderers who killed everything in their way. These creatures ruled the earth at one time and disappeared suddenly. I'll read you what it says. Enormous in its size, tremendous in its strength, somewhere, although it is not known when, these creatures may come alive after years of hibernation due to radioactive fallout. He has brains in several parts of his body, including the head, abdomen, and chest. He is a member of the Angelus family of fire monsters and can wipe out the human race.
Good Lord.
I just love that apparently a book about dinosaurs literally says it can come back to life due to radioactivity.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Great job. Jeez, man, that's rough. That sounds like a Simpsons joke. That sounds like a comedy bit. That doesn't even sound like a real movie.
Yeah, like the joke would have been in The Simpsons, like, did somebody actually write that? And it's like, that's not important or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like. I wouldn't be surprised if they did a joke like that. Good Lord. But it makes me want to see the movie. Honestly,
I'm sure there's a way we could watch it, but there wasn't one readily available, or there wasn't one on any streaming services or even YouTube. But
yeah.
So
we'll
overall,
one day.
Yeah, one day we may get to it.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I think we could say we both enjoyed it. Didn't love it. It's definitely weak compared to its predecessor, but
yeah.
Would you recommend it though?
Would I recommend it? Ooh, that's a tough one, right? Because like we said, I at least I thought it was okay. Had some fun moments, had some bad moments, but I would only recommend it to a hardcore Godzilla fan, or I guess a hardcore Godzilla fan would have already seen it. If you've seen the first Godzilla, right? Do not make this your first Godzilla, and make sure that it's something you'd be getting into. Know what you're getting into, then I'd be like, watch it. Just if you want to complete Godzilla, but don't make it your first movie, for sure. No,
and I agree 100%. As a big Godzilla fan, it's certainly not one of my favorites. In fact, it's probably of these original movies ending in the 70s, it's probably in the lower bracket, unfortunately. But there is good stuff in there. I would recommend, if you want to check out like the monster scenes, just look up Godzilla versus Angerous, and you can probably see the best parts right there.
I agree. Yeah, totally.
But I think that's about wraps it up. Is there anything else we want to add?
No, I think that wraps it up. That's about everything that I can think of.
Well, perfect. Well, this is not our last stop on the journey of Godzilla, but we will get to our next pit stop some other time. But Nathan, next time, what will we be talking about?
We're going to be talking about The Brother from Another Planet from 1984.
Perfect. And that movie is available on Tubi, and it's also on YouTube. So
yeah.
go watch it there too.
Yeah, it's readily available. If you have any memories about Godzilla, if you have any memories about the brother from another planet or anything, send us an email over at driveindoublefeaturepodcast@gmail.com. We would sure love to hear from you. And yeah, we'll catch you later. See you next time.